Okay, now we're like
Banana!
I messed up. Okay, welcome to Starlight Talks. Today I have Dani with me, and we're gonna have our guest Paul Graham and Rhiannon later on.
Oh, and by the way, the dog is right here too. So one of your dogs,
That's
Luke.
If you want to introduce yourself and a little bit about yourself, I'm gonna share the link a couple places.
All right. So while Chloe is sending in a couple of links, so by the way, for those of you who don't know me, so I am Dani Bowman. I am a 14-year-old animator with my own animation company. Sorry. Actually, I just screwed up. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Let me start my intro again. That's a outtake. My name is Dani Bowman. I am an animator with my own animation company, Danimation Entertainment, a company that I started when I was 14 years old. And I've been working professionally in the animation industry for the past 9 years. I have illustrated and published 6 books and premiered 8 award-winning animated shorts, a PSA, and a music video at San Diego Comic-Con. And I travel around the country teaching animation at summer camps to kids on the autism spectrum. For I also earned a bachelor's degree of fine arts in animation, thus which I graduated magna cum laude. And I'm currently right now going to get my continuing my education to get my MBA in business administration. It's called Masters in Business Administration in Management and Leadership. So basically, Chloe and I first met from the intermediate algebra class back at Woodbury University. That's where we first met.
Yeah. It was really cool meeting her. I think you were the only other person at my university with autism. And she was in animation and I was in film, and we kind of bonded over that storytelling and having trouble with our accommodations and getting that. Woodbury is one of the better places that does that.
And it does wonderful accommodations.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that the last time I saw you in my class was also in college algebra as well.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that when we went to college algebra?
Yes. Yeah, that was a difficult class. Yeah, and so she does a lot with the autism community. And when I started working with OurTism, going to more autism events, I would run into her everywhere we went.
Yeah, including the Art Fest.
Yeah.
That is last year I just animated a PSA for Autism Society of America, which was shown at over 4,000 AMC theaters nationwide. If the PSA is available on YouTube if you want to look up my PSA. So look it up in YouTube under Dani Bowman on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. She's great. I tagged her in the live stream over on my personal channel. If you want to check out everything about her, it's pretty cool. There's so much to cover about her. So I'd love to go into your story, but we only have Paul for a little bit. So we're going to talk to Paul for the first half and have a nice conversation with him. And then at the end, it'll be just me and Dani.
So we're also, not only we're going to meet with Paul, but also he has a neurotypical girlfriend. So we're also going to not only talk about his comics known as The Glove, which we'll also show which we will also show the trailer at the end of the show, but also about the experience of dating.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we're going to have Paul on the line, and so as his girlfriend, Rhiannon. So we're going to have them right now. So this is Paul. Paul Diagram. He is the creator of the comics The Glove, and he's also a writer. And he also has this company that is known as Beyond Wave Arts. It's a story about a young boy who discovers a glove, who just discovers the glove. and he also faces lots of great challenges, and there's lots of incredible adventures.
Mm-hmm. And it's really cool to have representation. That's really cool. And so it's representation by someone who lives with it. So that's really cool.
So Paul, how's everything going with you?
It's going well. Sorry, we have some technical issues. We can't connect our earbuds over.
But that's okay. So we were talking about your comics called The Glove, and this is considered to be OurTism's debut to the comics.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the glove, like you were saying earlier, is really connected with my own personal experience of dealing with my autism and being on the spectrum. And it was at a point in my life when I was a teenager and I didn't know how much on the spectrum I was. I was trying to learn and discover that, and I was starting to get aware of my boundaries and who I was. So I think that's a really interesting part of the comic, where it's a story of self-discovery. And I tried introducing, and in the comic, we actually don't really say the word autism until about issue 6, because when most people meet me, they're like, oh, you're kind of normal. And over time, they figure out how I'm autistic, what things are kind of off the spectrum. So I try to put that really into my comic as well. Yeah, sorry the headphones aren't working.
But that's okay, Paul. And you also have Rhiannon on the line. So Rhiannon, how's things going with you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I am doing fine, thanks.
Good.
So I have a question for you, Rhiannon. How long have you and Paul been together?
We've been together for about 8 years now. 7 of those years were long distance, actually. So this is our first year actually being in the same place for once.
This is really great.
Yeah.
So how was it like dating somebody on the autism spectrum?
Well, I don't really think of it as like I'm dating someone who has autism. I'm just thinking like I'm dating Paul.
Yes.
I don't really like titles and things like that. But I'm no stranger to autism and like the things that come along with it. My younger brother has autism. He's higher functioning, but he still has his troubles and things like that, especially growing up. So I'm familiar with dealing with those challenges, and I'm a little more, I feel like in a way I've become more patient towards those who have differences, and even just like trying to, give time for Paul to answer questions and things like that with slower processing. So it's just about, understanding and not putting too much pressure on people who are different.
That sounds like really great that you two are like bonded together. That I say it's 8 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we finally have 1 year together, which is really nice.
It is.
Yeah, no long-term distances anymore.
No more Skype calls.
Yes. Yeah.
So also I would like to talk a little bit about the recap from LA Comic-Con.
Oh yeah, I want to hear about that. I heard that you had a panel and there was only standing room only by the end of it, that you filled up the room, you didn't have any more seats.
Yeah.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Sounds really exciting.
Yeah, it was the second panel that I've been to. So I thought I knew how it was going to be like, and I was surprised by, the turnout. The last time I did a panel, it was also pretty filled, but not to the brim like it was this time. It was really cool seeing how much people were interested and cared about, autism and the experiences we go through, and want to learn more about it. It's kind of interesting the day and age that we live in, where it's a lot of extremism, where either people acknowledge it or they try to support it full-heartedly, and I'm really glad that it seems like it's leaning towards people really trying to support us and trying to learn about who we are and trying to be more respectful of our differences.
So you put the panel together, right? Was that?
It was my team that put it together. I was kind of more focused on trying to take care of a bunch of other things as well. Since writing the glove isn't the only thing I do, I also write Criminal King, and I'm also game designing the next video game we're going to make. Not the one that's going to be coming out hopefully soon, but yeah.
We are definitely looking forward to that. That not only you are like doing a video game, but I also, when you're in the panel as well, Amy Fagan is also creating a video game too. Did you know
Yeah.
that?
It was really cool hearing that. I'm not the only one trying to do these things. That there's more people out there who are really trying to help and get it out there, and trying to support autism in their own way. Trying to be themselves and the best them they can be. It's always great and inspirational.
And what I find kind of interesting is reaching out to Danny, who's a public speaker, and I know you've done the panels, so you're a public speaker. Like when I've been putting together people to interview for these live streams, I've gotten more than a few no's because of their fear of public speaking. And you guys seem really comfortable. And do you want to talk about your guys' experience with public speaking at all?
Well, my aunt and uncle usually says that I am not afraid of going on stage. I'm the one that always like to go on stage and talk about my autism and my experience and my gifted abilities. And for those of you who don't know my public speaking experiences, I travel to different parts of the states to do public speaking, like at OcaliCon in 2014 in Columbus, Ohio. I also did one in Oklahoma the next year, the Oklahoma Statewide Oddfest. And I also did like another couple of more keynotes, including like, I also went to, for 2 years in a row, I went to the Alaska Autism Roadshow, traveled to 4 different cities in Alaska: Juneau, Bethel, Soldotna, and Anchorage in 2016. And in 2017, I went to Fairbanks, Valdez, Palmer, and Sitka. Plus, I have spoken at what it's called, it's the Anchorage Elementary School, North Star Elementary, about making friends with autism. And also,
So how do you prepare? Do you have a lot of notes, a lot of practicing, or do you like to improv? What's your favorite?
when it comes, it really depends on the public speeches. If it's a shorter speech, I would definitely do more improv and more like, it's more fun when it's shorter. But if it's a long presentation, I definitely have to have a script with me, so that way I can be able to get all my words right. Sometimes I scrambled up with my speech, especially from the earlier first part of the show, right? Remember that I just screwed up in the first part?
Everyone messes up sometimes. I wouldn't be too hard on yourself about that. It was really cute before we started. She didn't know there was a countdown, and she started her little banana before it went live, and she did that a couple of times. Do you ever get nervous in front of a crowd?
Well, not usually. I don't get nervous when it comes to crowds, but my aunt got nervous, for example, when I was in OcaliCon in 2014 during a Q&A session from OcaliCon. When I decided to call Sandy out, Sandy just told me that the spotlights just went over her, and
It was too much. Paul, do you want to talk about your public speaking experiences?
Sure. Since I've only really done like 2 at these conventions, the first time I did it, my hands were shaking and I hit it underneath the table so no one would notice. Apparently, I still did a decent job with my speaking stuff capability. I felt kind of a little more comfortable the second time around. But I think I also do really good with question and answers. So like I'm really good at winging it, but not good at winging it without some form of structure. But I always knew though when I was growing up, because I was making such tremendous progress from where I started and where I was going. I knew that I was eventually going to have to start doing public speaking in my lifetime, especially with the dreams I wanted to do. I want to get my stories out there. I want people to learn and listen and appreciate and hopefully really get something deep and philosophical out of my stories. So I knew in order to do that, I have to speak up. If it was up to me, I would just be living under a rock somewhere. But I know that it's important to speak out. So I was just preparing my whole life to do that.
So we got a question. My 12-year-old daughter loves to illustrate. How can I help her use her extraordinary talent with art to fully use her gifts?
By the way, Paul, I just have to let you know that Chloe is reading from the Instagram feeds.
Yeah.
And every time when she reads on the Instagram feeds, she answers those questions. That's what she does in her show.
Yeah, we're on Instagram Live and we're on Facebook Live. I'm sorry for those of you on Instagram who can't see Paul. I don't know how to connect through Instagram, but if you're on Facebook, you can see everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we have this great question about how a 12-year-old can prepare to illustrate, and what I think we were really missing today is doing shadowing people in the industry. So going out and meeting people like Dani and like Paul who are already doing this.
Yes.
It's great, and talking to them and shadowing them and seeing if that's what you really want to do, getting involved in that field as much as you can. You can start at a young age, and I know Dani got herself involved very young with animation.
I started it when I was 14 years old. I'm currently 23 now.
Mm-hmm. And just practicing it, I know I'm wanted to do film for so long, and OurTism sort of organically started in the middle of that, and I sort of leaned away from film for a while. But I started when I was 13, just making films and posting them and sharing them and getting critiques, and then doing another film. I turned as many school projects as I could into film, and all that practice really gave me a head start when I got into that field and I started interning. People were like, how do you know so much already? It's well, I practiced and I tried and I messed up a lot, and then I learned from it.
Everybody messes up and everybody learns from their failures.
You learn way more from failures than from your success. And I think starting out and trying things and taking risks is important. And it's much easier to take risks when you're 12 than when you're given a budget to do a film.
Yeah,
or given
definitely.
a budget to create an animation, right? Where when you are just having fun with it, you can risk as much as you want and fail as much as you want, with no repercussions. Where if someone's paying you for a animation, right,
that's a benefit of
then
starting that young.
You've got to make it happen.
That is a benefit of starting young, like I did when I was 14 years old. What really inspired me to start when I was 14 years old is because there is a creator of Pokemon, co-creator of Pokemon, Satoshi Tariji. He started his game company, Game Freak, when he was 17, alongside with his friends like Ken Sugimori, who's a character designer of Pokemon, you name it. And I started Danimation Entertainment when I was 14 years old. It was formerly called, for those of you who don't know about it, it was formerly called Starlight Animation Studios. That's what it was originally called, before it changed its name to Danimation Entertainment during its 6th year.
Yeah, I think I knew you when you changed the name.
Mm-hmm.
I was I met you right during that transition.
You want to know how I changed the name from Starlight to Danimation?
Sure, tell us.
So for how its name was changed from Starlight Animation Studios to Danimation Entertainment, it's all because I got interviewed with the Ability magazine, and I think it's called the Ability magazine or something. And one of the articles and interviews I had was with David S. Zimmerman. He interviewed me. He's a really nice guy. And when I look up that article, the title is funny. It says Danimation. And it was like, it's pretty funny. It's pretty interesting that it looks like people will recognize the name Danny more than Powerlight. People don't know what's like, who's Powerlight? What's Powerlight? And and I realized that Parlay Animations, the name Parlay Animation Studios was too generic. So I decided to take that name of this article and change the logo name to change the company name to Danimation Entertainment.
It's a really cool name. Pretty cool. We got another question here on Facebook. Have you watched Despicable Me 1 2 3 the Minions movie? Yeah, we decided because it's our Halloween episode that we were gonna dress in costume, and Danny brought me this hat, so we dressed as minions.
And that is why we just shouted banana in the very beginning.
So I actually didn't see the first movie, but I've seen the Minions movie.
I did.
But my family's obsessed. I know Lillian loves the movies.
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, I got to watch the first and the second one, plus Minions.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, the Minions are adorable, and I've definitely been on the Universal ride. The bananas references are great.
Yeah.
Thank you for your questions.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see.
I was wondering, how much do you have time left for you, Paul and Rhiannon?
Well, we were actually able to grab dinner early, so we have a lot more time than we thought.
Oh, that's nice.
That's nice.
Let's see.
Is there anything else you want to say, Paul or Rhiannon?
Is another question coming? Oh, okay.
Sorry, continue. Is there any more questions?
Yeah. So
Have him talk more about his comics.
yeah, I was getting into. So what? Where do you?
Oh, another thing is, you also did these another book other than the glove. It's called it's anthropomorphic animals known as Criminal King.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Criminal King.
So Criminal King is a much darker story than the glove. As Rhiannon knows, Rhiannon's also an editor for me as well. Yes, that's very recently.
Mm-hmm.
But Criminal King is about a 19-year-old snake, so a much more older character, and he ends up getting framed as the prophesized Criminal King. So he has to go and try to prove his innocence, and as his life just starts downward spiral. So so Criminal King, that idea kind of came up randomly though, because it was a few things I wanted to do in my life. I wanted to make an anthropomorphic story where the animal characters are symbolic of who they are. I wanted to make a steampunk story, and I wanted to do kind of dark gangster, like Victorian era. And I was able to all put it together in one comic. And that's how Criminal King came to be.
Continue.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. So it's different because the glove, I had a message and a purpose to it, and Criminal King, I do have a message and purpose to it because I try to do that with all of my works, but it was kind of more sporadic, kind of came out of the blue. So the glove is much more interpersonal. I'm much more connected with the glove, but I love making Criminal King. It's like my one free comic I want to do, So yeah, what were we going to ask?
So I was gonna ask you because I have a bunch of friends who are artists and they get so worried about sharing their art, like it has to be perfect before they share it, or like that sort of thing. And so since you've published so much, like how do you feel about like when a project is finished and when do you put it out there? Because like I know as a writer, it's really hard to know when something's finished. You can work on it forever, and so I just reach a point where I'm like, okay, I gotta stop, and it's time to put it out there. It's good enough. So how do you feel about that process with your comics?
I feel like I'm always learning. So I'm always okay with going with like, okay, I got my points, my themes, and my messages across clearly. Once that happens, I'm like, it doesn't matter if it's perfect or not. It's now good enough to get out the door and to be understood correctly. You know, that's a lot of part of our scripting process is to make sure that it's understandable. You know, what I want to get across is getting across, and it can be the best story it can, and it never will be because every time I ask people about it, I ask them 4 questions: what's their favorite part? What's their least favorite part? Who's their favorite character? Who's their least favorite character? Because I'm always trying to find ways on how to self-improve. Like, although I might not have the issue, like I might have a plot hole in one issue, that doesn't mean that I can save that as something that can be resolved and figured out in another issue. You know, there's always a future chance, especially since the glove is such a long-term project, and same with Criminal King. And you know, like I'm hoping when the comic is done, I can make it into an animation series someday. Once I have the story completed, and then I can go back, correct a few things, make it better. So the idea that it's not done and I'm just getting it out there and it's learning and it's a growing thing gives me more comfort. Like I'm allowed to make mistakes now because it's only going to make me better in the future.
Yeah, like just like I made my mistakes with my animated short, the audition.
Mhm.
When I just look at my animated short again, I just see there's some couple of continuity mistakes I could see in my animated short. And you were right that it's always good to check for some cleanup and everything. So that's why checking for mistakes is the way of how you get better.
Yeah. If you're going into any sort of art field, you need to be able to handle critique. That's really important. Not only handle it, but ask for it and keep asking for it. Because if you don't see the flaws, you can't get better. But also, you can't nitpick your own flaws and only look at the flaws. So there's a balance there. So that can make art really challenging. And I know another thing, I have a friend who does not want to go into the art field but loves doing art. But the reason she doesn't want to do that is because she doesn't want to turn her fun hobby into work. And so how do you make that balance to where like you keep it fun and that it's always enjoyable to do, and it doesn't become like something stressful?
Well, I want to say I try to embrace the stress, but I try to do it at a really good pace. That's what helps me the most. You know, and I know that the people I work with, when I make a mistake, they're going to be like, "Hey, Paul, I don't understand this," or like, "I'm getting this message across. I think this is not what you're intending to do." So I know that I have people who are watching my back, helping me out. And, you know, like I said previously, it's just about making it good enough to learn from, good enough that people understand and comprehend. And once that's done, then it's good to go out. You know, we review a lot. We do a lot of drafts. Somewhere between 6 and 12 is usually per issue. So a lot of rewriting.
And also, you kind of get to focus on the fun stuff, the ideas and the writing. Like me and our other editor, Hunter, we go in, we're kind of a cleanup crew. You know, we fix the grammar, we ask questions and whatnot. So that's more of the technical, not so fun stuff, but it's fun for me. So, but less for you to have to worry about. So it's good to have a good group of people behind you and help you with the things that might be more difficult or not as fun.
Yeah. You know, everyone has blind spots that we can't see, we're not aware of. And that's why having a good team really helps with that. And it's very fun, you know, talking to people, because then you can start actually clearing up the gears, you know? Like the first drafts are always like, here's this really messy machine. And then they're like, okay, let's put in grease here and there. And we kind of talk about how to make things better, what things are stronger and not so strong. It's really communication process. That was the word I was looking for. Yeah.
And I want to address a little bit the autism side of me, because that is really what we focus on in this live stream. And so, have you experienced like challenges that make animation or doing your comic books challenges that you don't notice aren't with other people around you due to your autism, like certain struggles you face when doing these kind of things?
I think the biggest one is characters. I try to put in a lot of character subtlety to the best of my ability, and sometimes it comes out as like a baseball bat or a complete miss. So that's why it's always good to have conversations being like, hey, Paul, what are you trying to do? I'm like, I'm trying to do this thing. It's like, okay, let's figure out how to do this thing. And when I was a little kid, I couldn't form sentences until I was 6. So I'm always behind, and it surprises my mom that I chose to be a writer, because she was like, "You chose the hardest thing for yourself in life." I'm like, "Well, I can't draw very well. There's other things I can't do, but I think I can figure out how to tell a story. Maybe if I keep on trying at it, I'll get it one. I'll get it one of these days."
But it's something you're definitely passionate about. Like, I don't see you in any other field. Like, the ideas he comes up with, I'm sure you've read as well. Like, I couldn't come up with that.
Yeah.
So this is meant for you.
Yeah. I think that's a big thing too. I knew what I wanted from a young age, and I knew I was going to get here sooner or later. So that's just what I strived for my entire life. It was my obsession, was getting my imagination out there.
I know with Dani and I have very different sensory experiences. You're way more sensory seeking, where I'm more sensory avoiding.
Yeah.
Where when you get a lot of energy from going to things like Comic-Con, where like I was at a film shoot that same weekend where I couldn't go there, and I had to recharge for like 2 days. Like, it really zapped my energy, and where she's been at events with me and she's like, whoa, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to sleep now.
Well, believe it or not, I used to be like that before. But however, with the help of my aunt and uncle, I was inspired to be able to, I have to be more social. That is the biggest thing. And look at me now. I'm just right now getting better at socializing with other people. Yet, well, there's
It goes not too much. My parents do that too. So we have very different visions, like each person, of what social is. Well, like, everything's so relative. Where for people on the spectrum, a lot of times, like, going out and hanging out with a few people is very, very, very social, and that can zap a lot of energy. And so, where my little sister or my dad will like go to party after party after party, and they're like, that was a little bit social. Like, that is like, I can't handle that. So it's very interesting how, like, when you have a conversation with different people, how different their perspective can be on those things. So when you really define like those things down and why things can be so difficult, you get.
It looks like we have a question from. It looks like we just have a question from Jordan Blankership. He says, "Hey Jordan, by the way." So let's see. May I ask a couple of questions? Do you guys
as artists and writers ever find your characters and storylines are extensions of yourself and or your own negative/positive experiences?
This question is actually for you, Paul.
Oh.
For everyone.
Yeah, all of you.
I definitely base my stories on myself. Like, all of my characters are parts of myself. Like, I know that. Unless it's an adaptation of something. But when I create characters and a story, like villains are normally parts of myself I don't like very much exaggerated, and heroes are parts of myself I love exaggerated. And I or it's based on when I'm going through a strong emotion, I use writing to help me get through it. So it's based on that time and what I'm going through. And I wrote a story that I helped one day to turn into a short film about how I felt during when my grandpa passed away. And it's sort of the story of our relationship. The characters are definitely not me and him, but it's like our relationship and parts of like what I felt and was going through. So in that way, it's definitely based on me and my experiences and parts of me, but they're not true stories of things that took place. But I can just like take that emotion and build a character around that and be like, well, my character, this is what mourning is like, and create a character that's like that.
It all reflects back to the power of character design. I remember when I was taking the character design class back at Woodbury University, Stephen Wright is a really great professor. He talks about certain types of shapes, colors, and sizes, you name it. This is how they describe characters. Like, for example, you would recognize villain characters as like all sharp and pointy, all the sharp and pointy edges.
For sure.
Characters that are good guys, typically, some of them are round, some of them are pretty round, and other main characters are like a combination of circles and squares.
But do they relate to you?
But some of them,
in your life, do you base any of your stories on things that you
yes,
went through?
definitely.
Yeah.
The character, like, there's a lot of characters that are based on me. Like, for example, my character Mindy from my animated short, The Audition, typically represents my joyous self. She just represents my joyous self. While Sandra, on the other hand, represents my inner demon. She's like the bad gal or something. Kind of like Mindy. In other words, you would imagine Mindy's like my side angel, and Sandra's the side demon.
Not me.
But the other character is the pink lizard character, Sandra, from my animated short, my senior thesis, The Audition. But anyways, I have a Mindy doll. For those of you who don't know what Mindy looks like, she is this cute little Moppet clown. If you see, little gal right here, little hat. There she is.
I'll show Instagram as well. This is a character she designed. It's in one of her animations. Pretty cool.
It's really.
I actually got this made into a plush toy from a company in Boynton, Florida, known as Budsies. So, but it's really expensive to make a plush toy like this. It costed me about like less than $100, and so that and it took me, and this took about, I got this ordered back in late May. Then it got it finished in the early part of July, the first days of July. So
Jordan wanted to know if you guys are judged based. Here, let me see.
The
bottom part.
How do you guys find yourself judged in the real world outside your art? So, Paul, do you want to answer that question?
Well, I was already, I grew up in a really good environment. The judging happens more with strangers and kind of when I was younger, so I have a hard time remembering. I'll probably have a better time answering the previous question than this one, but
Go ahead and answer the previous question if you want to.
I can connect with the previous question to this one, though, to answer your question really well. That, I've had a lot of great teachers who really understood me, but I also had teachers that didn't, and that didn't want to comprehend and didn't want to assist me at all, because they thought that, like, they were assisting by not being so critical instead of like, so they were like, oh, write stuff down. With my extreme dyslexia, it blocks my train of thought because I'm trying to focus so hard on writing. My writing, it used to be, it's gotten a little better, so I guess it still is almost that close. But I couldn't read my own writing with my dyslexia. So anything I wrote down, I wouldn't be able to read. So it prevented me from performing to the best of my ability. And these teachers are like, just do it anyway. You know, they're like, oh, it doesn't matter. You know, you're not being graded on it. It's like, it matters to me because it blocks my capabilities of using my brain to the most of its to the best of its possibilities. So I always made sure that in those classes, I didn't write anything down. I thought about the questions, I remembered it, and I made sure to speak it out loud so then the teacher could comprehend that I did do the work. I
feel like similar where like a lot of that judgment didn't come from like bullying straight out. It came more from like people not understanding and saying things they thought were helpful but were actually really insulting, such as that sort of thing. They thought they were helping, but instead they like really called you out and like made you feel like that you weren't able to learn. And I definitely had that experience as well, especially with teachers or with family members growing up, where I was like, no.
Well, people on the autism were typically on the same boat. I do have
Yeah.
I do have some challenges with like reading and comprehension. At Woodbury University, I am currently taking an MBA course. One of the classes I'm taking is organizational behavior and strategy, and one of the homework assignments requires so much on the reading and comprehension. But when it comes to homework assignments, there's lots of things that I can. There's lots of things to discover. Like for example, when I was taking an organizational behavior and strategies class, I learned that great leaders think from the inner part of the brain, known as the limbic brain, which represents emotions and emotional appeals, while think from to the outside, known as the neocortex. In other words, people think of why, how, and what.
Mm-hmm.
So we could talk about school forever, but I've definitely had
Jason.
live streams covering that. So I want to keep us on topic of like animation and Halloween, and we can go back to dating. But I definitely have like a bunch of live streams on the topic of school. So we've covered that a lot.
Another question he just asked is called, is there a prejudice some people vocalize as far as your abilities? He wants to know prejudice, Jordan.
What did you say?
He says, is there a prejudice?
Prejudice.
Oh,
I'm sorry. That's okay.
Is there a prejudice some people vocalize as far as their ability? So like, do people believe that you're really, really good at art due to your autism, or not so great at it, or like that kind of stuff?
Well, not exactly. I didn't really hear anything recently. However, I did got bullied, which is it was back at middle school. Somebody just drew plums at me while I was like,
Plums? like a food fight?
Not really. It's kind of, but I was just sitting there alone. Just that was when I was walking into the cafeteria before I went to my classroom during breakfast. I was like in a breakfast, and I was sitting at my table staring at a wall, and somebody would throw plums at me from behind. I was hit twice.
So when you're like at your animation conventions, or like trying to talk about your art, and you mention, oh, I have autism, or someone finds out you have autism, do they think that you're supposed to act a certain way, or
Not really.
a certain
I don't
way
think
when they talk to you, go, oh, you're really high functioning for someone with autism, or oh, I didn't expect you to be like that because you have autism, like that kind of
Well,
thing.
I don't think I ever encountered these. I never really encountered these things at all recently, especially like at conventions. I don't think I ever encountered somebody that mentioned something like that. And but believe it or not, California's rule says prejudice. They're against prejudice. It's hard to pronounce that word. Discrimination is intolerant. It's intolerable.
Prejudice is less of like an an outward like attack. It's more of like, I don't understand this subject and having preconceived ideas about it. So if someone knew nothing about autism, knew no one with autism, they're gonna have an idea about it because it's, you know, presented on TV. If they saw Atypical, they're like, oh, you're not like the kid from Atypical. If they saw young Sheldon or something, you're not like Sheldon. Like that's a prejudice, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
But sometimes
like,
it could be a mistake.
Yeah.
And some people would take it like as an offense. Some people get upset when they're like a little prejudiced, right?
Yeah, true.
Like,
so,
we are not Rain Man. Like, we are not Sheldon.
Yes. A little more diverse than that. Yeah, because when I talk, there's a few times, very rarely, when I do mention that I have autism, they're like, oh, so you're really good at math. I'm like, no, I really am terrible at math. I can't memorize the multiplication tables to save my life. They're
we met in a math class and we were both like, this is so hard.
We both struggled. But luckily, when we were in both, you and I, in our college algebra class with Rabik Yaguin, I remember one of our professors' name. Annie Chu was a little tough. Well, Rabik, on the other hand, I was pretty good at it, and I soared through that class.
Yeah. With math in particular, with me, it was kind of funny because like before using a calculator, I was terrible. After using a calculator, I became amazing. And
like the little mistakes would get me where like I understood how to do it, but I'd be like, I forgot the negative sign. And then you lose all credit on the
yeah.
Good points. But also, when it comes to memorizing with using the calculator, sometimes, and when I was using Microsoft Excel, when I'm doing my homework assignments, especially like for accounting practices and financial accounting, the Excel sheet is pretty useful because I could just not only save all the equations, but also to like find datas, everything. Well, what was the most frightening part about dating, anyways?
So, do you want to answer? Or?
No, you go.
I go. Okay.
Would it be? I think it's like asking someone in the first place, like going up and be like, "Hey, do you want to start?" Like that's really scary, right?
Yeah.
That's like what's gonna happen, and like the worst someone can do is say no, but for some reason that's so terrifying to just ask someone if they want to.
It never hurts to ask. If they say no, then it's okay.
Yeah.
It's never be afraid to ask when you're going on a date.
It's so scary.
I have a funny story about that actually. So there was a time I was waiting to get picked up at school because we went to the same high school, and Paul he ran into me and I was like, oh hi, and he said, oh, what are you doing later today? And I thought, oh, is he gonna ask me out because I liked him? And I was like, oh, I have no plans. He's all, okay, great, see you tomorrow, bye. And I was like, oh, darn.
Yeah. I bailed ship because I realized I was too busy. I was like, oh. Yeah.
I was similar story. I was trying to ask my friend to a dance, but his school was at outdoor ed, so I couldn't ask him.
Oh.
So I asked his mom just if he was available so I could get his ticket and everything. And then I was gonna ask him when he got back. And so she was like, yeah, he's available. I'm sure he'd love it. And we were really good friends. So I was like not worried about him saying no, just like, okay, is he available? And so I got his ticket and everything. And then I think I sent him a text. And so when he turned his phone on, he got the text and he was like, well, my mom's an idiot because I'm busy all weekend.
Oh, that's so sad.
Rejected. Well, just never give up when it comes to dating. When it comes to dating, do not give up. And for me, well, dating, I have.
She just talked about how she doesn't want to date right before we did the live stream.
Well, but anyways, let me just talk about a little bit about my dating experience. I had a boyfriend for just for almost a year. His name is, well, I don't want to say the name or anything, but it was longer, like any type of boyfriend experiences. Yet, he has problems with socializing with other. I cannot say the whole entire thing. I'm sorry.
She's being shut down. We're not gossiping here and Starlight Dogs. But now she had some awful experiences with dating, and she's had some nice experiences with dating, and
Yes.
I think that's common with everyone. And so when you feel that rejection, it's hard to start again and put yourself out there again. I know my little sister went through a terrible breakup, and she's gone through a while of being really upset and not wanting to date anyone else, and like so it happens.
Yep.
Dating.
So we want to talk about Danny was interested in talking about the difference with dating a neurotypical versus dating someone with autism. And I know like there's very different ideas those on the spectrum have of like, oh, I want to date someone neurotypical, or I only want to date people on the spectrum. And they have very good reasons for both opinions. And I think Danny's more leaning towards wanting to date someone on the spectrum because she's had bad experiences
However,
with
I'm
neurotypicals.
completely more flexible when it comes to like dating somebody who is very highly motivated. It doesn't matter if a person is on the spectrum or not. It just has to be somebody that is motivated, somebody that is dedicated, think for themselves, be able to have a living, something like that. They need to have this accomplishment already.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
I find like the pros and cons that come to mind to me is like someone on the spectrum might connect with you more with your struggles, but they also have this similar struggles. So it's hard to help each other when you're going through the same thing, except for just support. Where like if I were to have a sensory overload, Danny will probably have one too. And so it'd be really hard to help each other, where someone neurotypical would have different kind of struggles, which would be harder to relate to.
That's
but
true.
They would be able to help me out in situations,
As long as the person that you're dating understands your struggles and understands everything.
Yeah.
Imagine if your date is able to understand your struggles, understand your diagnosis, you name it.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I have a friend of mine who is on the autism spectrum. Well, about Aunt Sandy's age, somewhat close to Sandy's age, and now she's a granny with her she already has 2 grandkids. Imagine that, she has a family.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna have babies. Some people with autism may have 8 babies, others don't. For me, I'm not, because I know what pregnancy is like.
I don't think you know what pregnancy is
Well,
like. We're gonna take that comment back. She thinks she's seen other people. She knows about it. She's not experienced this.
I know, but I know it's gonna hurt a lot on delivery.
Yeah.
But anyways, it is like 7:54 p.m. Maybe I can just talk quickly a little bit about my next upcoming screenings for my animated shorts. I forgot to mention that my animated short, The Audition, is going to be shown at the CNC Teen Hollywood Film Festival. By the way, it is from November 7th through the 11th, but the main festival is going to be Saturday the 10th, and it goes from 2 to 4 p.m. the screenings, including my animated short. And on Thursday, November 8th, there's also going to be like I am invited to be part of the City Club LA Mixer, which is part of the CNC Teen Hollywood Film Festival, which talks about the previous CNC Teen Hollywood filmmakers, because I was invited to the CNC Teen Hollywood Film Festival, the second annual one, back in 2014, when I premiered. Where I showed one of my animated shorts, Air vs. Soda Doom.
Mhm.
The audition. I also forgot to mention that not only the audition is shown locally, but also shown globally. One in India, which is going to be shown at the Lift India Film Staff in December, and the London International Motion Picture Awards in May 2019.
I'm sure you'll have all your information up on your Facebook page. I'll link to you, and you guys should follow Dani. You guys should find out. I'll link to Paul's trailers for his comic books. If you guys want to learn more about that, I'll have all of that up after the live stream.
Also including the trailer of my animated short, The Audition, if you would like to see the trailer. And also, don't forget to check out the Audition animated short Facebook page. It is my senior thesis, by the way, from Woodbury University.
She's an animator. She loves her animation.
I also want to mention quickly that both of my comics are online to read for free at glovecomic.com and primalkingcomic.com. So if you want to know more about my experiences of dealing with autism, right through the character of Tim in the glove is the best way to experience it. Yeah.
I'd love to have you guys back to talk more, because this was a really great discussion. I'm sure there's a lot more we could go into. But I'm wrapping up right now. I do these live streams every week for people who are new. Every week. It's normally Wednesdays at 7 o'clock. We did Tuesdays because Dana's not available on Wednesdays.
That's why.
And Halloween's tomorrow. So it worked out perfectly.
Especially with Armenian costumes. So we're
still yellow. Next week I have Dani Rady, and we're going to talk about holidays, especially with Thanksgiving and Christmas and Hanukkah and all that coming up. So we're going to talk about that and all of his new projects. There's really cool projects. So come back next week to see Dani Rady. Thank you guys for watching. Please check out our website, OurTism.com, where you can see my articles where I write about living on the spectrum. We have a support group on Thursday. Come to the support group. Is it the adults on the spectrum? No, it's the parent.
No, it's adults on the spectrum.
It's adults on the spectrum
Adults on
on
the
Thursday.
spectrum.
We have for this support group on Thursdays at 7. We're located in Redondo Beach. So check out OurTism, check out Dani, check out Paul, and all their wonderful things. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for joining us, Paul and Rhiannon.
Thank you.
And tomorrow, happy haunting.
Thank you, everybody.
Stay colorful.
Stay colorful, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.